Welcome back to Sextras,
where we talk about sex and all the extras.
I'm Honey and I eat all my food separately. Firstly, I eat everything, like my least favourite thing first and then my favourite thing last, but I also eat everything separately because I just don't like my food like touching or anything like that.
Wow, I'm so happy
Good
that I
fun
know
fact.
that now.
It's quality information.
Okay, well, thanks, hun. Hi, guys, I'm Maria, and my fun fact is equally as interesting in that I've never broken a bone or anything. I've never really had any incidents like that. I sliced my finger in the first day of uni, literally like when I just trying to cut a bagel, but that's about it. That's the worst thing I've done to my body.
Depends how you look at it. Nice. I've also never broken a bone, so we're twins.
Oh wow, look at us strong women over here.
Except I do have about like every other illness on the planet, so I don't think I
Yeah,
can
that
really
is true.
qualify as that strong.
You literally have an autoimmune disease, so like
True.
Clearly.
Also, I'm still like the only one out of all our friends that's had COVID, so okay. Well, we have a very exciting guest with us today. Her name is Morgan Doman. She is a life and clarity coach, and we're going to talk about boundaries, people pleasing, all of that exciting stuff. So please welcome Morgan.
Hey ladies, thank you for having me. I know I'm supposed to tell you my fun fact. Weirdly, I've never I sprained a thumb, but I never broke a bone either. I guess my fun fact is that I speak Italian.
Oh, that's cool.
So I wouldn't have expected that.
Nice.
I kind of grew up in Italy a little bit, and it's like weird, and it was a great time, but yeah.
Do you get to use your Italian at the moment, or do you have to wait till you can go back?
No, I haven't used it in about a year now, so yeah. It's weird though, sometimes I'm like walking down the street and I hear Italian and I'm like, I know what they're saying.
Yeah, I love that. I love when you can understand what people are saying and they don't know that you know.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun trick, and you know, people will be shocked when I'm like, you know, hi back.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited, and to start the episode off, we asked our listeners some questions that hopefully you can help us out with. So we asked people, what are some boundaries you've set, want to set, or probably should set? And that could be with your significant other or your family or friends. So Maria, do you want to start us off with the first submission?
Okay, so someone said, I don't like touch. Please stop hugging, groping, or petting me out of the blue without warning.
Yeah, this is a really important one. It's a little bit different if this is like a significant other in a way, and if it's not, if it's just like a friend or a family member and they're touching you without your consent, you need to tell them to back off. I mean, obviously you can sit down and say, like, for me right now, like being touched in this way or being groped in this way makes me really uncomfortable. Please stop doing it. Obviously you have to set that boundary. If it's with a significant other, it's a little bit more complicated, because I'm assuming you do have relations with them and you want them to touch you sometimes. Like, that's not always not what you want. So I would say to like really have a conversation about how it makes you feel, and it has nothing to do with them, because it's usually, my guess is this person is dealing with some trauma. So, you know, to explain that like that's where it's coming from, it's not about you, it's just sometimes I really don't want to be touched. So first of all, if you touch me and I don't like it, I'm going to tell you and ask you to not take it personally, because it's not about you. Like, that's the biggest issue. A lot of people in relationships, like if someone's like, hey, can you not touch me right now? Their first question is, what did I do? But it's not always about you, especially when someone is trying to heal some trauma. And usually, like, turning it on yourself is actually like the worst thing you can do. So yeah, I think you really need to have like a very open conversation about it, and really stress to them that it's not about them. It's about, just the moment, or maybe you just don't feel comfortable in certain situations being touched.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I think something that like all people should know, but especially men, is like when you ask for consent, it's actually really sexy. Like, there's nothing sexier than a man saying, "Can I kiss you?" And so I really encourage everyone to start getting into the habit of this. And I will just say, like, when I read this, I had to check my own bias because I assumed a woman wrote this. But it's very possible a guy wrote this, because there is like this, it's so interesting. There can be a double standard. Like, I've literally seen women in college, especially, like, touch men or hold them without asking consent either. So I'm just gonna say, like, this is for everybody. Ask for consent, especially when it's like, a friendship or anything like that. Like, you should never touch anyone without their consent. And remember that consent is an enthusiastic yes, not an absence of a no. Like, so you need to hear the word, and especially if it's someone you don't know very well, it's even more important.
Yeah, for sure. I've had this problem too with, if you suffer from things like anxiety, that kind of thing, maybe sometimes you're just super not in the mood to be touched and you need your space and you feel like someone's invading your space, even if it's your significant other. And yeah, it's so easy for someone to take it personally, but you have to like communicate those things so that it's not a miscommunication, and it's not like, obviously you're never trying to offend them by saying I don't want you to touch me. That's not the point. It's just being aware of what state of mind other people are in.
And also, when we're talking about boundaries, when we set them, the other person tends to take them personally. And this is the way we're all raised. So until like we uncondition ourselves, we do need to really say, it's not you, it's me. And on the other side, like, be really honest when it is the other person. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a trap. Like, oh, don't touch me, it's not about you, and it actually is. Like, you're angry with that person, so if you are, make sure you say, how you feel.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like lying and saying, oh, it's not you, that's just creating so many more problems with setting boundaries in future, because then they'll just be like, is this a trick? The next one is to not let him keep doing something that hurts me over and over again.
Yeah. My first question to the asker on this is like, why are you with someone who's hurting you over and over again? I mean, from the way I read this, I really just want to encourage the person to say, like, get out of this relationship. I mean, if someone's really hurting you over and over again after you've set a boundary, then, you need to ask yourself if this relationship is really serving you. And I'm not saying that's an easy answer. I know, like, when there's love and he's very attractive, it's very hard to break it up. But if someone's hurting you over and over again after you have stated it, then yeah, I think it's the end of a relationship. On the other side, I would ask yourself, are you stating it, like, clearly? Sometimes when we set boundaries, we think we're stating it clearly and we're really not. We're trying to, like, spare the other person's feelings, but, like, in doing so, what we're asking for becomes very convoluted. That's like the people pleasers in us. So I would say, like, are you stating it clearly? And one of the easiest ways is just to, like, try it out on a friend and say, like, do you understand this? And if they're like, yeah, like, that's that's clear to me, then I think your answer is, like, you need to be out of this person's life.
Yeah. When you have that person that is hurting you over and over again, as in, like, when you're just letting them hurt you, and they're hurting you because you've shown them that you're just letting them. So I think it's like sort of advice on how to just tell yourself, like, no, you need to draw the line here. Like, you can't you have to show them that they can't hurt you. They can't keep hurting you.
Absolutely. And that's when you need to start working on your self-worth. Self-worth is like actually at the bottom of people pleasing and boundary setting and all of this. Like, you need to ask yourself, like, how much do I love myself? How much am I worth? How much do I deserve? And then you need to state what you need from that person from that place. Kind of for a very cheesy way of saying it, but you need to do it in your power, and not in a way that's giving them all the power. So yeah, I absolutely feel that it's definitely about raising your worth and knowing how valuable you are to yourself and to everybody else. This can be especially hard if it's a family member, because like they're not always easy to get out of your life. You know what I mean? Like it's much more complicated. So in those cases, I would say get them out of your environment or out of your energy field as much as you can. Try and disconnect from caring about what they think. And that can really just be like, some people like visualize like a cord being cut, like we no longer have a connection and I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it.
Yeah, I like that image.
The next one is not allowed to insult my friends or siblings. So I'm assuming as in their like a boundary with their partner is that they're not allowed to insult their friends or siblings.
Yeah, this is a good one. I would check the environment in general around insulting people. If there's a lot of gossip going on, that's all stuff that you need to have a conversation with in general. For this person, I think it's really important that you state really clearly that certain things that are being said make you feel uncomfortable and like you're betraying your sibling or your, a family member or whatever when you're having these conversations. So that would be like my, I'll say it about 1 billion times during this, whole recording, but like, it's about stating clearly about how that person makes you feel when they're doing something. That's why like I language is very helpful. So it's like, I'm going to just give an example, but it's like, I feel like I'm betraying my brother when we have these types of conversations. So I needed to stop. That person can't really like debate with you how you feel. So it's a nice place to start that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really struggle with using I language because I feel like it has to be so not removed from your emotions, but you really have to not act in a super emotional and reactive way, which is definitely something that I want to work on. But it's so interesting to reframe it like that because, yeah, as you say, they can't argue with you about how you feel if you frame it like that. They just have to be like, okay, they have no other choice.
And depending on like what you want in a relationship too, with a significant other, this could be a major red flag. Someone who's willing to throw your sibling under a bus, even just verbally, could be a red flag. So I would encourage that person to be like, is this person really have the integrity of someone that I want to be with?
Yeah.
It's always really awkward when like obviously you're allowed to, I insult my siblings all the time and like say mean stuff about them all the time and like my parents, but if other people start saying the same things, it's kind of like, okay, but that's a bit weird. Like they're my family, so obviously I can say it, not you. So
okay. Well, the next one is not letting their happiness come at the expense of yours.
Oh yeah, big time. I struggle with this bad boy.
The classic putting others' needs above your own. It's the only time in human existence where it should really happen is if you're a parent. But except for that situation, I really like to just say like, this is a core issue with people pleasers, but also just with like codependency issues in general. Essentially what happens is the dynamic there for most people is I am so worried. I subconsciously, I don't want to lose your love. So I am going to put your needs above my own because your love is so important. If I lose your love, I'll be alone, I'll be sad. etc., etc. And so that tends to be at the core of it. It's actually the fear of losing love that, continues this cycle. It's a really hard one to break. And even as someone who's been a recovering people pleaser for 2.5 years, it's still really hard sometimes because I want, it's a human need to be loved. So really the first step is just becoming aware. Like, just start to become aware of when you are doing it and say to yourself, is this really necessary? Like, do I really need to do this? And in the beginning, it's okay to cancel. Like, this is a big one. Like, if you agree to do something and you're like, you know what, I'm really putting that person's need above my own, call back, text back, and just be like, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I can't do it. And that's it. Don't let your schedule be at the mercy of others. Yeah.
I think that's so important. And I think time is the biggest issue. We've talked about it before, kind of how if someone's so present in your life and you're always seeing them, if you live with them, or even if you don't live with them and you see them every day, it's so easy to kind of let your lives be so intertwined that you can't even recognize that you're putting their needs over yours, because you can't even separate the two, really. But it's being able to take that step back and even just cancel one plan and be like, okay, well, we can't do this today because I just really need some time to like think or just be by myself, and then that will give you the perspective that you need.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, it's so important to honor your needs. Like, when we don't, we easily start to self-sabotage and go into coping mechanisms that are hurtful and harmful. So absolutely, like, that's such a good point. Like, and I think in a way, this is like one of the sides of COVID that I think has been an interesting lesson for all of us. Like, we actually don't have to go. We don't have to show up. In fact, we have like a pretty good out. So that's interesting. I think a lot of people are setting that, they're using COVID as an excuse, but at the same time, like, it's great for them to actually have some time alone and really get to like center themselves.
Definitely. The next one is I'm never gonna kiss someone I'm hooking up with.
So I'm assuming the question is like, I won't kiss someone I'm having sex with, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that if that's the case for you, and you don't want to kiss someone, I think you have to state that before you guys even initiate sex. This is going to be uncomfortable one because it's not in the norm, and for some people, like, it may be really hard to get into sex without foreplay or kissing. That also occurred to me that it may be like really difficult, but yeah, if you don't like to kiss someone, you just need to say it.
Yeah, I actually think there's a lot of people that don't really kiss people that they're just having sex with. Like, they only kiss people that they're more like, it's a more intimate, as in like, not that they don't ever kiss anyone that they have sex with, but I think it's more like a relationship thing.
I mean, personally, for me, like, I would not be turned on enough, but I think it's just a conversation. I'd be like, what's happening?
Do you think it's because guys really think that girls are super, super into kissing? Because I've met a lot of guys that think that girls are really into kissing, which obviously a lot of, like, everyone likes kissing, but people think if you kiss them, they're going to get super attached. I feel like that's the problem.
Really? I don't think so. My friend, who is a guy, he doesn't really get with people that he fucks. He just, he thinks it's more for like his, like a girlfriend kind of thing, and he just thinks that it's like too intimate. And our other friend also thinks that. He's also a guy. He doesn't get with people that he just casually sleeps with because it's too intimate. I don't think it's because it's like they think that girls think it's too intimate. I think that they themselves also think that, which I kind of get.
So for them, they can stay emotionally distant with sex if they don't kiss a woman.
Yeah, I think that it's more that.
I'm like, my first thing, and this may be a little crude for me to say, but my first question is, are you really giving these girls an orgasm? Like, I'm sure there are women who don't need to be kissed and don't need to be like, I don't know, like any foreplay. I mean, I guess it's possible, but yeah, it's interesting that they're trying to stay emotionally disconnected by not kissing. It's very fascinating to me. You just need to be really clear about it, that that's what you want in that moment. I'm just going to say on the other side, though, like if a man said to me, I don't want to kiss, I just want to have sex, I would say this isn't working for me. On both sides, like if something sexually doesn't work for you or physically, you also have to say it on the other side too.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so next one. Don't treat me as your therapist.
Oh, I love this one. I have this really bad because I'm a coach, and like friends will be like, let's talk to Morgan about all my problems, and I'm like, that'll be a lot of money now, thank you. No, honestly, I think the most important thing, like when a friend is talking to you and needs to talk through something, the best thing you can ask them is a very, really simple question of, do you need sympathy or solutions? Because a lot of times people just need to vent and they just need to get it off their chest and we're done, we're good, okay, you're feeling great, that sucks. You know, you do the whole like, that sucks. I'm sorry you feel that way. But if they want solutions, you can be like, well, you know, how about you talk to that person, or how about you tell them X, Y, and Z? You know what I mean? So it's a really nice way to give them what they need. I will say something that really helped me as well is when I was in my coaching training, one of the things we have to learn is like how to not get attached to the other person's needs. Like we can't fix everybody's problems. And so just remind yourself, you don't need to fix your friend's problems. Like their issues are their problems. And so it's really important to remind yourself of that. If you ever start to feel like you're your friend's therapist, like that's their problem. Like you can't fix it. So anyway, that's definitely what I would say. And if someone is like dumping a lot on you, then just, you know, you need to tell them.
Yeah.
How can you, do you have any sort of like tips on how to tell someone in a way that isn't like gonna make them feel even worse, sort of thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I just want to say, like, you can always set the boundary of like, I'm sorry, like I can't talk right now. If you're not in a good headspace or you don't want to really talk to someone, like you should state that. That's a boundary you have the right to set. Even if someone is in crisis, it's still not your responsibility if they're a full-grown adult to help them. So if you're just not in a good headspace, you don't want to, you're just not right to be there for them at that moment, that's okay. And feel free to set that boundary. If you do want to be there for them, then I think you have to say, you know, sometimes when we're talking about X, Y, and Z, it feels a little bit like I have to fix your problems or I have to be your therapist. And I don't think that's what your intention is, but I just wanted to check in with you about what you need from me in that time. Like, what are you looking for? And that's when you can bring it back to sympathy or solutions. Because a lot of people who feel that way, like they're a therapist, a lot of times they are trying to fix the other person, and you can't, you know, you're not their therapist. So just be their friend, just be there to support them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it kind of comes back to that whole putting their needs over yours again. Like absolutely, just not being able to make that separation. Just because someone needs you doesn't mean you have to be there for them. Okay, so the next one is, don't compete for attention when I'm with my friends. If you can't coexist, then don't bother.
Yeah, what was your interpretation of this question? I was a little bit like, I wonder what they're trying.
I feel like it's someone being like, okay, in my head it's a guy. And he's basically saying to like about his girlfriend, when I'm with my friends, don't be like wanting my attention, and like don't always be like wanting to be with me, and like I'm not allowed to see my friends, kind of thing. Like we can both. That's kind of how I saw it.
Oh, so it sounds like you got a stage 5 clinger. Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, if you have someone who's clinging a lot, especially a woman, but if you have someone who's very clingy, there's two things that could, well, there's a lot of things that could be going on, but the two main things are they have codependency issues. So they're codependent on you to feel good. And so they're like over clinging to you to try and get that kind of gratification. If you feel like it could be that, then ask them, like, what needs can I meet? You know, how can I be there for you so that you don't feel this need to like be with me all the time? Like, I want to have space apart and still feel safe in this relationship. And if that's a need for you, like that could be a need. I need time alone, or I need time just with my friends away from this relationship. I know I'm that way. Like, I'm a huge introvert, so I need a lot of time alone. And I also, you know, I like to be with certain friends without a boyfriend there, just because it's, you know, it's, I don't know, girl time, or it's nice to connect with people one-on-one. So it's important that you say to them, you know, what do you need from me? Like, what can I do to make you feel more secure? Because it could be something really simple. Like, she could just be like, well, when you're with your friends, you never acknowledge me at all, and it hurts my feelings, and so then I cling on harder. You know what I mean? Like, it could be a lot of things. So ask her, why is this the dynamic? Like, what can I do to make you feel more secure? Because if someone is clingy, like hardcore clingy, it means they have an anxious attachment style, and they're anxious that you're going to leave them. So you need to like come up with solutions to help them feel more secure in the relationship. Now, that's also on the other person's responsibility to feel more secure. Like, if there's nothing you're doing, you know, it could be a maturity issue. Like, maybe she's just not ready. If that's the case, then I would say, like, you have to decide if it's something you can deal with or not. But yeah, I think, you know, having a conversation with how can I meet your needs, and then stating that, be really clear about why you need time with your friends too. I mean, if you state things clearly and just say, you know, I need time with my friends for X, Y, and Z, it has nothing to do with you. Maybe it'll also make her feel more secure. So those are all different ways that you can deal with it. If you are the clinger, if you're like clinging on really hardcore, I would highly recommend you look at some of your like attachment, your attachment style. How are you attaching to someone else? Are you anxious they're going to leave you? All these things actually can really sabotage a relationship. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, when I saw this, I was kind of like, obviously, I completely agree with everything you say. Like, attachment style, especially anxious attachment style, can definitely impact that. But I was also thinking, like, this is kind of a generalization. Some guys are just really clueless, and I can so imagine you're like hanging out with him and his friends, and as you said, he just doesn't acknowledge your presence at all, and that's making them feel more invisible, and so they're trying like desperately to cling on to something. So yeah, kind of trying to find something that makes them feel comfortable in that situation, especially because it can be so scary meeting someone's friends, or you're going into a situation where you don't know the other people, and then you're even more uncomfortable because of that, plus your like boyfriend or girlfriend who you actually know isn't giving you that validation that, oh, it's okay, this is a safe place for you, and like you're accepted. I think that can be kind of like very, very difficult.
No, this is a really, really important point, actually. Yeah, like the person who's like asking this question, essentially, you need to check yourself. I mean, I agree with you completely, especially in a dynamic of like one girl with a lot of men. It's very common she's shut down. I mean, I've been in that situation. Most women at some point have been in that situation. And like often your opinions are ignored, you know, and the guys don't even realize they're doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. Like, check yourself. Make sure you're actually being kind in the situation.
Yeah, and regardless of like significant other as well, I think if you're ever taking anyone into a situation where they're the new person, you should just try to make them feel comfortable and included.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, should we move on to the last question? Honey, do you want to read it?
When I start getting really anxious and need space, I'll just get up and leave. First time it happened, it led to a bit of an argument, but once I explained it, she now respects that I need to just be alone to break out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is beautiful. I think this is like, I was like, oh, this person answered their own question. Yeah, I mean, it's all about communication and explaining that sometimes you need to have, time apart. I am an introvert, so this is like my life all the time. Having to set this boundary with friends, with partners for sure. So, if that's who you are, just get really good at it. And if you're in love with an introvert, like it's just something you're gonna have to like deal with.
Yeah, for sure. I have the same problem. I have had to explain this countless times, and often people take it really personally, but I'm like, I just need time to recharge. And the same with the first one about touch. I'm like, if it's my alone time, I just want to be me. Like, I need 2 meters space. You go all the way to the other side.
Yeah, like sometimes I think to myself, I'm like, I've seen some couples that are very conscious do this, and I'm like, I want this, is like have separate bedrooms. I'm like, that sounds amazing. I don't know why we as humans stopped doing this, but I was like, I want to do this again. Like, I want my own room. Like,
even just a separate house. Like, I'm so down to live us apart if we're married. I don't care.
Yeah. And like, just to like kind of say, having a relationship, like make it your own. You don't have to play by other people's rules. And if you need something, say it and work on it with your significant other and do the same for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. My neighbor recently got engaged. He must be in his 60s, but we asked him if he's going to move house to live with his fiance, and he was like, surely you know the key to a successful marriage is having separate houses. And my mum was like, yeah, I'm beginning to realize that. And I just so agree. Like, if I ever, I mean, not that I want to get married, but if I do end up with someone, then that's my plan. Just either live in like a castle, which obviously is the dream, and just have separate wings of the house, or you just live apart, and then when you're in the mood you see each other. Okay, well, thank you for answering our guests' queries and helping them set some boundaries. So, Morgan, can you tell us a little bit about how you became a life coach, why you became a life coach, like what inspired you to pursue this career?
Well, it was a very interesting kind of events that happened. I was actually the managing director of a nonprofit, a very powerful position, all about finances and business and strategy. And I loved what I did, but I could feel that it wasn't really like aligning with my true personality. Like, I was almost like one person at work and then like another person at home, and I didn't really like that. And so I was talking to some people, and a mentor of mine actually did my numerology, and he said that there's a healer in me, and that healer is like dying. Like, she needs to like come alive, and she's like what you're supposed to be doing. And I was like, healer? Like, I don't want to be a doctor. Definitely not going back to school for a million years. So I was like, well, I love to talk. I love to have conversations with people. I love deep conversations. And so I was like, what about coaching? And so I went into coaching. I got certified, and I realized that I love doing this, and I love helping people through just simply talking, through conversation, dig deep into who they are, what they want, and help them really rise into the person they want to be, and like, kind of for me, our lives are like masterpieces, they're pieces of art, and you can tell people who have really like lived their life. We all know people in our life who like just have incredible lives. And I love helping people get there, you know, and helping people achieve that. And through that, I get to live my best life. And so, yeah, I get to talk all day, which is like best case scenario for me.
Yeah, I feel you.
That's so nice. So we talked about people pleasing and your particular interest in that, but do you think that's because that's something that you see very often amongst the people that you work with, or what draws you to that particular focus?
Yeah, actually I would say like the people I work with are all people pleasers. That's why they connect with me, because I'm a recovering people pleaser. And the reason I use that phrase is because I think so many people connect to it. Like, we all know what it's like to put someone else's needs above our own. And just some of us do it to a much larger extent and a much more draining extent. And so I just love to help people take back control. First of all, start meeting their own needs, because most of the time people pleasers are not meeting their own needs at all. And they're like completely they're not doing self-care. They're not doing basic hygiene sometimes. They're just, everybody else is more important than they are. So we first have to start with, how can you give yourself what you need? And then, of course, you know, and this is when boundaries come into play. How can you communicate to people in your life what you need from them? And, you know, one of my favorite groups of people that I work with is mothers, because moms tend to go into hyper people pleaser mode and they never come out. Like, their kids are like 5 and no longer need them every second, you know, but they're still in that like overworking situation or mindset, and they really need help getting out of it. So it's really, and also like a lot of people pleasers tend to be overworkers. They tend to like work super long hours. They feel it's necessary to prove something or whatever. It's usually a coping skill, or a coping mechanism, I should say. But yeah, I connect because I know what it's like, you know, to be exhausted, to be totally drained, to be burnt out. Not because I'm doing what I love, but because I'm putting everyone else's needs above my own. And that's how you burn out. You don't burn out doing what you love. It's impossible. It won't happen. You can burn out very easily giving your energy to things that don't serve you and to people, or to overgive your energy to people.
Yeah, that's so relatable to my life right now. You said that you're a recovering people pleaser. Was there a moment where you were like, okay, this is just enough now. I need to stop doing this. Like, I've had enough.
Yeah, so back in 2017, at the very end of the year, I started the nonprofit that I was the managing director for. And I loved that job. Don't get me wrong. It was an amazing, amazing job. And so I'm so grateful for it. But about 6 months in, I had overworked myself to the extent that I was totally burnt out mentally and emotionally and physically. I felt so sick. I had put on a lot of weight, which I don't want to fat shame or anything. Like, I'm not a thin person myself, but like, I was like eating in a way that was like super unhealthy and was just causing myself to be very sick. And so I just like, I realized it was like April 2018. I was like, I am going to have a full-blown breakdown if I don't do something. And it was in that moment that I like started to put really simple boundaries into my life. Like, I was waking up at like 7 a.m. and starting to work. I was stopping work at like 8 p.m. I was like, that's it. You know, I do not start until 9 o'clock. I am done at 5:30. I don't give a crap what anyone says. Like, I literally like told everyone I worked with, I was like, I have to do this. I started to, you know, simply move my body. Like, I just went for walks. I started to implement other forms of self-care. I got rid of a boyfriend, you know, like, you know, some of that stuff. I stopped. I didn't like, I wouldn't say I like threw people out of my life, but people who are like particularly draining, I kind of avoided. And I just started to like take care of myself in a different way. And I honestly, I think every adult gets to this point. Like there's at some point, usually in your 20s, at some point you have a moment of like, oh shit, like I can't keep treating my body like I'm 17 anymore because I'm gonna get so sick. Like it's just like such a thing. But yeah, for me, like that's when I started to really ask myself, like, what do I want in life? And then a few months later, I heard about coaching and I started my certification. So, it was really about putting, it's always first about dealing with your own boundaries with yourself, because people pleasers have an issue like just doing stuff for themselves too. Like, they will say yes to your needs so they don't have to go for their run. You know what I mean? So they get really good at like not doing stuff for themselves. So that's another thing, like setting those boundaries first are actually the hardest ones to set usually.
So do you think that in terms of those, because you said like a lot of it is setting those personal boundaries, and I think like a lot of that rings with me. I think like a lot of my problems is just setting boundaries within myself rather than like with other people. But do you think part of the people pleaser mentality and kind of what you were describing, like getting so burnt out, is like a big problem with saying no and like knowing how to say no? And like, do you have any sort of like tips on how to go around that whole big like no word?
Oh, yes. Saying no, and this is especially for women, is in so hard because we are literally taught that no is a bad word. Like, how many times do you see like a little kid being like, "No, I don't want that," and someone goes, "Hey, don't talk like that. That's rude." Like it happens all the time. Kids are actually incredibly good at setting boundaries. Like, don't touch me. Like, you hear it all the time. But people are literally overriding their natural instincts because it's rude. Now, obviously we have to teach our kids how to speak to one another. But we shouldn't be untraining them. Like, kids naturally set boundaries. And we all are naturally born with like a great sixth sense. Like, when you're a kid, you know when you're in danger. Like it's literally like it comes over you in a way that's like you feel it. You know, if like, for example, like when you're a kid and someone doesn't feel right, you know it pretty quickly. But we almost like untrain children to listen to their instincts and to set boundaries. A classic one, and this is one that my mother never did, is like going into a kid's room. If that's their space, that should be respected, and no one should enter each other's rooms without consent. And it is a really nice way to teach kids about physical consent and like what you can and cannot do. And so I bring this up because we actually it's so difficult to say no because we've had years of training to not say it. And that is why earlier I said, men especially, you need to listen for a yes versus an absence of a no, because we as women are so conditioned not to say no that we are often terrified to say it and we don't. And I know for me, like I know of situations, especially when I was in university, where I had sex with a man. I didn't really want to do it, but I never said no. And I truly believe like these guys are good people. Like if I had said no, they would have stopped. Right? Or and it gets to a point where you start convincing yourself you want to do it because you're so scared of saying no. So it is so hard. And so the first thing I say is like, just start saying no to little things, like super tiny things. Just start conditioning yourself. Like a good place to start is actually like food can be a good place. Like, no, I'm not going to eat that. That's a good place to start because it's like kind of simple. Or just scheduling stuff like, no, I don't want to hang out at that time. Like that can be a good place to start. Learning to say no more is so hard, and it's really just about practice and reminding yourself like I can say no. And absolutely, it's a fascinating thing because for me still it can be really hard like it can be really hard to say no.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a practice of like coming back to what do I deserve, what do I need, and really stating it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said the thing about like sexual consent as well, because as you were saying that, I was just thinking that even if someone says, do you want to do this? And I say no, I feel like it's very much a thing amongst women that you say no the first time, but if they continue to push it, then I probably will end up saying yes because I don't want to have to keep saying no. And that's also something that isn't recognized as a no. Me and Maria have talked about this before, that, you know, it can be your boyfriend and they're wanting to do something, and obviously it's not their intention to pressure you into it, but the more you get asked the question and the more you have to say no, the more that pressure builds up in your mind, like, oh, I have to keep saying no, maybe I should just say yes. And I very much am guilty of just ending up saying yes, even though I originally said no.
Yeah, and honestly, I hear you completely, and I think that as well, we need to become more in our society, like listening more for the no. Like we need to be really respectful ourselves, that if a friend says no, we really honor that. And then also, if you have to say no a second time, especially with sex or anything physical, you need to call that person out and be like, I already said no. Because in truth, they're probably just not being sensitive to the original no. And honestly, like, I really do think, like, for a lot of guys, they absolutely mean no harm, but they're just, like, not called out. I mean, seriously, like, sometimes I'm like, call the guy out. Because if he's a good guy, he'll be like, oh shit, like, I really need to, like, listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And guys, like, if you hear a no, it's a no. And it doesn't matter if she says, like, no, like, all sexy, that doesn't matter. It's a no.
Oh,
Yeah.
I hate that so much when guys, because it's just such a dangerous thing that guys think that no means, oh, maybe, or like keep trying, especially when it comes to sex. Even because some girls say no in that way, like all sexy, because that's their way of coping with it, and that's their way of letting you down gently. It's not like a, oh, I'm like teasing you, keep trying kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it gets my blood boiling.
Yeah. It's definitely a place of, like, you know, I think guys are, I think especially like in the millennial and lower generations, men are becoming more sensitive to the no and to the dynamics of power. But at the same time, it's also really important to guys that if you feel like your partner isn't in it, you also need to stop, because there becomes this like really bad negative feeling if you do have sex with someone who doesn't really want to have sex with you. Like it becomes a toxic situation regardless of the words that were being spoken. So, you know, listen to your gut. If a girl isn't into it, stop. Like, stop, seriously. And I know you want to have sex, like we all want to have sex, and this is the thing, like girls want to have sex too. It's just like, you know, stop, just stop.
Okay, well, can we talk a bit about attachment styles, even though we have talked briefly about it already? But do you think people pleasing is particularly linked to a certain attachment style?
Yeah, usual. It's kind of interesting. It's classically, I think, the anxious attachment style, which is like the clinginess, like we were talking about earlier, but it can also get avoidant as well with passive aggressive behavior. Like a lot of people pleasers, because they're always putting other needs above their own, they tend to become very passive aggressive and manipulative. Like they become masters of it to get what they need. And so they can get really passive aggressive. This is my issue. I'm not like a clingy person, but I will get passive aggressive and then eventually explode. That tends to be my cycle if I'm not super careful. And I do, on my blog, I talk a little bit about anger and passive aggressive behavior because it's a huge sign of people pleasing, and it's a great place to start in terms of recovery. But it's funny, it's actually kind of both, but it depends on the person and what they learned in their childhood and how to cope. But I would ask yourself, are you clingy, or are you like passive aggressive? Are you like avoidant to dealing with the situation? Like a lot of people who are in relationships, like your boyfriend will be like, are you okay? And you say no, and you're not okay, right? Like you are lying. It's very important you understand you are lying. And so you need to be honest about your feelings. And if you're with someone who you don't feel comfortable being honest with, then that's something you need to deal with.
Yeah. That's interesting that you say both, because, well, you said anxious first and Maria's anxious, and then you said avoidant and I'm avoidant. So I was like,
Yes, I don't know. Okay, this may be, like, it's interesting because I'm avoidant too, and I get it from, like, the English side of my family. And some of my English UK clients are, like, we're all masters of the, like, avoidant passive-aggressive
it's
behavior.
so true.
So I wonder if, like...
It's so true.
It's such... it feels very British thing to
It
do.
is, because it's so ingrained, like the whole stiff upper lip thing. No one says what they actually mean, and that's just like what everyone grows up with. And I don't necessarily know if that's where mine comes from. I mean, obviously it's partly childhood, but it might have also been a relationship that I had a few years ago. But I just can't say what I need until you were saying, like, until the last minute. Like, I will just get angry or get overwhelmed, and then it all comes rushing out. And I need to be able to be better at it, and I need to not people please, because I think the reason is like, oh, I don't want to upset them by saying what I want, or I don't want to offend them because I'm going to say it in the wrong way, that kind of thing. So it's like, I'll just put it off until I need to say it. And then it all bursts.
Yeah, and that's also why, like, with relationships, start with the start with the little things too. Like, start with the things that don't hold as much weight, just be like, ask for something a little bit more. Just start to become aware and, amp it up just a little bit so that you can learn to do it. Because it is hard. It's really, really hard. That's why I have clients in the first place, because, like, I am there as, like, support when they're going in for those tough conversations. Like, I literally will be texting a client and be like, you can do it. And that's why people, we need coaches and therapists, because sometimes you have to work through this, one-on-one.
Yeah, for sure. Maria, do you have any questions about your attachment style?
I guess my question would be, how do you hear someone telling you something like, maybe we should set a boundary of let's not call every night? How do I hear that and not take it like, oh, you don't want to talk to me and you hate me, because if you loved me in the way that I loved you, you would want to talk to me all the time, because that's how I feel, So I guess it's like how to not take people setting boundaries personally. Do you have any advice on that?
Yes. I think that understanding why, like, ask the question why. A lot of times when we hear something, we automatically go into we are being rejected. And it's not really actually reality. And what's happening is, like, so someone's telling you something and your mind is going into, oh my God, I'm being rejected. And the reason it's doing that is because it's learned that certain things mean rejection, and it's trying to protect you. So it's kind of like getting in front of you, right? Like, it's like, whoa, you're getting rejected, get out of this right now, like, get out of the relationship. When in truth, like, the guy's just like, can we just, like, take a break on Sundays? So it's really important to understand that when you're feeling like, take a moment when you're not talking to anybody and feel that rejection, or feel that feeling in your body, so you know what it is. And then the next time you feel it in a conversation, you can be like, wait a minute, this is just my mind trying to protect me. So what is this person really saying to me? Oh, okay. Then you can start dissecting it. Like, this person's saying they need a break here because of their X, Y, and Z. It's not about me. Right? And so you're almost like overriding your mind's protective ability. And it's not always easy, but a great place to start is really knowing what the feeling is, becoming aware of when that part of your mind is turning on. That alone can actually get you pretty far in not taking things personally, because that all it is it's a protection mechanism, and it's a beautiful one too. Like, it's something to be admired that our mind works like that. And I'm sure at some point in your life it really was very protective and awesome. But yeah, just becoming aware and just saying like, okay, I got it, but I'm gonna listen to this person and really hear them. It's fascinating. People are having conversations and they're not actually hearing each other. They're waiting for it to respond. So a good way to override this as well is to, like, let's say someone is like, hey, I can't go out with you on Thursday because like I just need some time alone. You can say back to them, okay, so what I'm hearing is you need some time alone, so we're not going to meet up on Thursday. And they can be like, yes, that is correct. You can be like, got it. Right? Like, you're actually making sure you're digesting what they just said correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, another thing that I just thought of when you were talking about singling out that feeling and how that's like a big step of it. I think that I've kind of been doing that. I feel like helps. Sometimes to give an example, it was exam season recently and my boyfriend was coming back to Bristol and we were going to see each other again, and he was basically saying like, yeah, but I'm basically not going to be able to see you, so don't like get upset with me when I can't see you when we're there, blah blah blah. And I was like, and I was just like, okay, whatever. And then he's like, so you're not going to get upset? And I was like, well, I'm not going to say that I'm not going to get upset. And like in moments that I am upset, I'll be like, yeah, I'm really upset about this. And it's like making me feel like shit because I want to see you, or like because it makes me feel like you don't want to see me. But I understand that is not what you're trying to say with this. It is just because you're busy. So I'm saying I am upset and I'm like annoyed at the situation, but I'm not upset at you or whatever. Like, distinguishing like, yeah, it's cool. I feel like shit and this makes me feel really sad. But distinguishing that I'm not really sad at him or like because he's rejecting me. I'm just sad because the situation makes me sad,
This is also a really good point about masculine and feminine polarity energy. And I find this kind of thing very fascinating, but your boyfriend, and like, I don't know him, guys, so like my first thought though is that he's a fixer.
Yeah.
In the sense that he's like, you're not gonna get angry, right?
Yes.
Like you're like he wants you to guarantee him that you are not upset about this. And I love that. But he also needs, like, from another point of view, is like when you are in your like, a lot of men were raised by women who are in their masculine. And what that means is that they are strong, powerful women, right? Who are, and everyone's strong and powerful, but they are like aggressive. I hate to use like the sex to talk about the energy polarity because it like gets convoluted. But my point is, a lot of guys fear women who are emotional. What men need to understand is that the female body, first of all, like, we get emotional and we let things out. And we should never apologize for it, ever. Okay? And by the way, I'm not saying emotional means being aggressive or being a bitch or an asshole or whatever. I'm just saying, like, we're allowed to sob and people need to F off about it. So what I encourage a lot of guys to do is learn to hold space for it instead of absorbing it or getting upset with it. So, like, just like if someone in your life is like upset and crying, just sit with them and listen. You don't have to fix it. It's not your job to fix her upset. It's your job just to sit there and hold it. And I think that we can all relate to like that feeling of when a man is just sitting in presence with someone. There's like this great video of a man doing it with his 3-year-old daughter who's having a temper tantrum, and he's just he's like, it's just such a great, she's like flipping out, and he's just like sitting there kind of like holding her and like making sure she doesn't hit her head on anything, but like he's not trying to fix it, you know, he's not trying to like calm her down, he's just letting her be, and he's there to protect her. So I really encourage men to start to think about this.
I was gonna say, it's interesting the way you're saying with men sitting there, because I feel like I very much, if someone's crying, I will sit there, and I don't particularly feel comfortable knowing how to comfort them or knowing what to say. But I have felt that expectation in the past from men. You need to fix me, you need to help me through this, when in my head I'm like, is it not okay? Is it not enough that I'm just here and witnessing it and like supporting you through my presence, you know? So I don't know, it's a difficult one to unpack, but yeah, it was just interesting that you said that.
It's a beautiful process getting to dissect these things. So that's why I always really recommend like sitting down and going back to that question of like, do you need solutions or do you need empathy? Because sometimes like we really don't need solutions. In fact, usually we don't. We just want someone to comfort us.
Yeah. Okay, well, kind of leading on from that, do you think, because we talked about trauma with the touching boundaries earlier, do you think trauma can affect people pleasing? And do you think it can affect people setting boundaries?
Oh yeah. Now I just want to say, like, I'm not a therapist, so if someone is experiencing trauma, like you should go to a therapist. But one of the best analogies I ever heard is like trauma is like taking a bucket of paint and just throwing it against everything in your life, because it just gets everywhere. And it's so hard to figure out where the trauma is, especially if you didn't necessarily have like a massively traumatic moment. It was more like little aggressive traumas throughout a period of time. But absolutely it can. A lot of people, like if we go back to what we were saying earlier about the fear of losing love, the fear of not being enough, these things usually come from a traumatic experience. Now, it's important to understand, like, traumatic experience isn't always someone hurting us physically. Like, and it can, from the surface of it, it may have just looked like a normal interaction, but for you, it was super traumatizing. Like, for me, for example, there was a moment, like when I was doing some therapy a while ago, there was a moment where I was going to kiss someone, and this is when I was like young, 13, and he pulled away. Now, for me, it was highly traumatizing because, you know, my brain was like, oh, he doesn't love me, he doesn't think I'm beautiful, and so boom, like I have this trauma. Now, of course, he had every right to pull away. Like, it was, you know, a very benign 13-year-old moment, but in that moment for me, it was super traumatizing, and it's something I've been, you know, healing for so long. And so it's you know, we have to go back to those childhood moments, and we can do that in therapy. That's a great place to do it, and really start to understand and heal them, and also see how they color our life. Like, it is just incredible sometimes. Like, you know, this feeling of being unlovable, it can make me feel subconscious even when I like go into a bar. You know what I mean? Like, my mind is like, if when I was 13 that guy didn't love me, why would anyone in this bar love me? Right? Now, of course, that's bullshit. But like, that's the reality that my mind is seeing. So it's yes, absolutely is the answer. And that's why like a lot of people do therapy and coaching, because together it's like a great combination to go back to those healing patterns.
That's interesting. I've never heard of people doing two at the same time, like both. So that's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a massive up level in your life, that's the way to go. Like therapy and coaching at the same time.
That sounds ideal. If I wasn't a student, I would be doing that. Okay, well, just to kind of like finish off the episode, can we talk a bit about like the most common things you see people struggling to set boundaries with, and like give us a few pointers as to how those could be not fixed, but how you can work on them?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the number one biggest thing is saying yes to something that you don't really want to do and then not going back and fixing it. If you say yes to something and you automatically feel like, I don't want to do it, it's really important that you honor that feeling and go back and cancel it or whatever, because it's showing you that you can indeed like set a boundary for yourself. So for Maria, like a lot of the things we've been talking about, I would definitely say like go back and be like, no. You know what I mean? With yourself. It's really, really important. Or yes, with yourself, depending.
Yeah.
A lot of people pleasers have issues with others. They think they feel guilty like constantly about what they're not doing. And so what I really always recommend is that you understand clearly how that feeling of guilt shows up in your body, so that when it comes, you can just breathe through it and let it go. Because the guilt is your responsibility to deal with. This is a really important point. The guilt is your responsibility. Now, if someone's like actively guilting you, that's tell them to go F off. But like most of the time, guilt shows up. It actually has very little to do with the other person. It's our responsibility to work through it and breathe through it. And in terms of places to start, you know, as a recovering people pleaser, I always suggest you start with a rock solid morning or evening routine. Have something that's yours and no one comes between you and this routine. And it can be 10 minutes, it can be 20 minutes, whatever. But like make a time every day where you meet with yourself and show up fully. And everybody in your life needs to know, like, don't call me, don't talk to me. Like if you have roommates, tell them like, I'm going to start doing an evening routine from 9 to 9:30. Like, don't talk to me during that time. I will lock my door or whatever. And let it be something, maybe it's a creative time for you. Like you write or you draw, or maybe it's a health thing. You do yoga, or, you know, for me, it's meditation and journaling. Like whatever it is, you know, make it something that really serves you and just start there. 10 minutes a day. Really like take back your time. Because the thing is, if you do it for 10 minutes, it'll start to get easier throughout your life.
That's good advice. I have recently started doing like a morning routine, or trying to do it more, and I definitely feel like it helps. It kind of like sets a precedent for your whole day. Even if you're with other people during the day, you're still able to like check in with yourself because you've had that like starting off point for the day.
Yeah, and especially with what we're dealing with right now with COVID, you know, this is a global trauma that we are all dealing with right now, and it's even more important to be showing up for yourself and really caring for yourself in that way. You know, self-care right now is so important. It's the best thing you can do for the planet right now, unless you're like one of the scientists creating the vaccine. You self-care must be is all you can do for the planet right now.
I wish everyone did self-care, because imagine what an amazing world we would live in if everyone took that time for themselves and loved themselves.
Absolutely. Like imagine
Imagine Donald Trump took like an hour at the start of his day.
Imagine Donald Trump taking care of himself.
Or maybe he just took too much care of himself, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I said it before, but I'll say it one more time. You know, setting boundaries, people pleasing, this is all side effects of low self-worth. Look at your self-worth. You know, what do you really think of yourself? what do you really deserve? What do you really love about yourself? And especially for women, this is an inside question and an outside question, like in the sense that it's about what do you love about who you are, but also what do you love about your body? And, for me, I talk a lot on Instagram and on my blog about like body image, because for me, like the self-worth journey was a lot about dealing with my body image and body dysmorphia. And so I just want to encourage women, if you look in the mirror and you don't love what you see, it's not about losing weight or whatever. It's about changing, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that is for you as well. So, start to really say, what do I love about myself? What do I hate about myself? And how can I love that? How can I send it love? Not try and change it, not try and fix it, and that's in quotes. What can I just simply do to love myself? And that's why self-care is so great, because once you start doing it, it's a form of love. It's a form of self-love. And so you want that to radiate through your whole life. And that includes your body and everything about you.
That's so good. I'm so glad you said that, because I think body image is a huge part of it, and we didn't touch on it too much, but I know, especially for women, but for men as well, they can't even begin to think about self-care because you're so consumed with like what you think you're meant to look like, or you have to fix this, and you're so focused on a specific thing. And it's something everyone struggles with, and it's never gonna be completely perfect, but you have to put in like a small bit every day to get to the place you want to be.
Absolutely. And that's it. Is consistency is key. So keep coming back to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Maria, anything you want to add?
No, not really. Just want to say thank you so much for talking to us and like just having a conversation about all these things, which I feel like it's just good for people to know. Like a lot of the time, I think we just need a reminder, like there's nothing wrong with you. Everyone like struggles with this, and where everyone's just trying their best, and all you can do is like talk about it, and in talking about it, maybe like that will help. So thank you for just like teaching us some things, giving us some tips, and hopefully everyone has learnt something, and if not, at least hopefully people relate or whatever. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone is interested, like come be with me on Instagram. It's under my name, and that's where I talk a lot about this, and I try and give a lot of motivation. So we'll keep going together as a tribe.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll link it in the episode description so people can find you easily. And do you want us to put your blog as well?
Yeah, that's on my website, morgandoman.com. And I usually do like a weekly blog to help people pleasers, like, get deeper all the time. And I love to write. So that's my creativity every week. So check it out.
Yeah, definitely check it out, guys.
Sounds great. Thank you so much again for joining us, and we hope, as Maria said, we hope you enjoyed. You can find us on Instagram at Sextras Podcast, on Facebook Sextras Podcast, on our website sextraspodcast.com, or you can email us sextraspodcast@gmail.com, all the usual places. So we hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for your support. Don't forget to subscribe and review, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Sextras, presented by Honey Jane Wyatt and Maria Jose Hayodatiyi, produced by Mabel Productions.